Hello and a very warm welcome. Thanks for tuning in to News 9 Live. You know what they say, right? Every tiger has a story and an audience as well. And from the olden days of hunting as a sport and dead animals as trophies, today we have come to commemorate not only 50 years of Project Tiger, but also the big cat boom and their importance in ecological advancement. Prime Minister Narendra Modi released the latest Tiger Census from Karnataka's Bandipur, which shows a 6.7% increase in the population of the big cats in the last 4 years. As for the latest tally, there are 3,167 tigers according to the census data of 2022, a significant increase from 2,967 tigers back in the year 2018. The International Big Cat Alliance has been launched and initiated by India to commemorate 50 years of Project Tiger and bring closer the countries that are home to the 7 big cats and share data, research for better communication amongst these countries. But even as the tiger numbers cross the 3,000 mark, the threats to their habitats, poaching, human-animal conflict, and railway tracks and highways across these tiger reserves certainly continue. And finally, after its roaring success, even as India is set to offer its tigers and conservation expertise to other countries, what's the agenda for the next half a century? And are we headed in the right direction? We have experts, tiger experts and conservation scientists joining us on the broadcast here. We're going to be joined by Prerna Singh Bindra, wildlife conservationist. She's a writer and wildlife conservationist with a primary focus on conservation of wildlife habitats. She has served on India's National Board for Wildlife and its Core Standing Committee and Uttarakhand State Wildlife Advisory Board. She was part of the team of the National Tiger Conservation Authority to assess the management effectiveness of tiger reserves. Prerna has also authored The Vanishing India's Wildlife Crisis and 2 books for children. In 2019, she co-edited Wild Treasures. That's quite a mouthful already. And also with us on the broadcast is Dr. Pranav Chanchani, who's a tiger conservationist and currently the lead tiger conservationist, the head at WWF India. Very warm welcome on the broadcast to you. I'm going to ask the tiger experts and our panelists to just hold on just a bit longer. Let's quickly listen into an excerpt of the Prime Minister whilst he was addressing the gathering in Karnataka yesterday. Let's quickly take a look at that.
बिग कैट्स की वजह से टाइगर रिजर्व्स में पर्यटकों की संख्या बढ़ी और इससे स्थानीय अर्थव्यवस्था को मजबूती मिली है। बिग कैट्स की मौजूदगी ने हर जगह स्थानीय लोगों के जीवन और वहां के इकोलॉजी पर सकारात्मक असर डाला है। साथियों, कुछ महीने पहले भारत की बायोडायवर्सिटी को समृद्ध करने के लिए हमने एक और अहम काम किया है। दशकों पहले भारत से चीता विलुप्त हो गया था। हम इस शानदार बिग कैट को नामीबिया और दक्षिण अफ्रीका से भारत लेकर आए हैं। ये एक बिग कैट का पहला सफल ट्रांसकॉन्टिनेंटल ट्रांसलोकेशन है। कुछ दिन पहले ही कूनो नेशनल पार्क में 4 सुंदर शावकों ने जन्म लिया है। भारत की धरती से चीता करीब 75 साल पहले विलुप्त हो गया था। यानी करीब 75 साल बाद भारत की धरती पर किसी चीता ने जन्म लिया है। ये एक बहुत ही शुभ शुरुआत है।
Well, Dr. Pranav Chanchani, let's get the ball rolling here. We are going to be hearing 2 other excerpts from the Prime Minister's speech as well, and he is definitely talking about the huge jumps and leaps that the country is taking when it comes to wildlife conservation, especially tigers as well. But that particular release, that particular data that has been released in the Tiger Census, is there any particular point of worry for India? How did you read those numbers, the data in the latest Tiger Census?
Well, good afternoon, and thanks for having me here. Certainly, when I look at a report like that, there is good news in it. So, I'll dwell on that for just a moment to say that at the very least, since the last census about 4 years ago, numbers, if anything, seem to be stable or increasing, and that in the times that we live in the state, in the history of the planet, we've never seen an era where the environment has been as besieged from so many forms of anthropogenic pressures. So I think off the bat, there's something to be quite proud about. That said, certainly, there are aspects of the report or the little information that's contained in the summary report that raise some red flags, and these are not necessarily new. But one point, for example, is the fact that I think something in the range of about 70% of tiger habitats across India are still bereft of tiger populations. Or if there are tigers in these areas, they occur in very low densities. So that establishes that the species is really still in trouble, that the range declines that have occurred over time haven't completely been reversed, and that significant challenges lie ahead. The other point that I might speak to is while there are some populations, several well-known ones, for example, Corbett and Nagarhole and Kanha and other such tiger reserves, where there really are thriving tiger populations. But there's a range of tiger reserves in protected areas and areas beyond tiger reserves and protected areas where the species still occurs at very low densities. Densities are so low that populations can, imminently go extinct for a number of reasons, including, for example, the loss of habitat connectivity, retaliatory killing because of unaddressed human-wildlife conflict, and so on. So I think there are daunting challenges ahead, even as we, at least for the moment, can bask in the light of the achievements that in India's tiger conservation efforts.
All right. Well, certainly, some red flags that have been raised by Dr. Chachani. Prerna Singh Bindra, wildlife conservationist, also with us on the broadcast. Prerna, can you help us understand? I mean, all these media outlets have now suddenly come out with extensive graphics about the numbers, about what's happening in the Brahmaputra belt, what's happening in the Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats. The number in the Western Ghats is, not really happy, if I could use that word per se. What's the difference between the other, ranges and the other belts where tiger conservation is being looked at? And why is the Western Ghats and the number of tigers over there falling behind?
Well, first I would just thank you so much for having me here. I'll first quickly comment on the fact that it's a moment to be proud of, that India, in spite of all the immense pressures of dense populations, economic growth, grinding poverty at one level, has managed to stabilize and achieve tiger conservation. And we must remember here that this is not an overnight success. It's 50 years of effort of foresters, frontline staff, conservationists, scientists, local communities, the sacrifice, the law that was made to protect tigers, ban on hunting, all of that tremendous effort, setting aside land in a land-scarce country, that we are here, we are where we are today. That this foundation, still stands true. We still need those habitats. We still need that protection and commitment, is something we should not lose sight of. Now, having said that, yes, a certain population, certain things that come out in the estimates is a worry. As Pranav pointed out, the Western Ghats. To me, a greater worry is the central and eastern habitats. These are states of Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Odisha. Excellent tiger elephant habitat, particularly when you look at Jharkhand, Odisha, and Chhattisgarh. But the populations are not even suboptimum, they are nearing extinction in reserves like Palamu Tiger Reserves and reserves like Satkosia. And these are the places, these are large tracts of forest decimated increasingly beyond the protected areas by mining, hydel projects, highways. So we are looking at populations which are which are at the point of extinction, and why is there that we have so much less focus on conservation over there? I think these are the areas we need to focus on. Typically, also when we move to the Western Ghats, we'll see that the decline is outside protected areas. The decline is towards also North Uttar Kannada and parts of Goa. Now, Goa for years has declined, saying that it has any resident population. It has refused to acknowledge its tigers. Why? I fear it is because of it's catering to the interests of mining in those particular areas. We have projects which have widened habitat, which have widened railways and roadways, highways into national parks and very tiger-rich forests of the areas, and we see a decline. So I think there is something that we really need to reflect on, because while we have a good population currently, we have a stable, I don't know about good, but we certainly have a stable population that we need to be proud of. But what is its future when we are decimating A, its habitat, and B, the corridors which are critical for long-time future survival for a genetically healthy population? So to me, these are the red flags, because the report also underlines all these issues. It underlines why corridors are important. It underlines that development activities are posing a threat. Human-wildlife conflict, as Pranav points out, is something we very seriously need
I'm going to take that question to I'm going to take that question to Dr. Chanchani, because balancing economic growth whilst conservation does not suffer is something the Prime Minister also spoke about. But before I take that question, Prerna Singh was talking about the population. Let's quickly hear what the Prime Minister had to say when he was talking about the number of big cats in the country.
ये जो टाइगर की संख्या का आंकड़ा हमने छुआ है, जो देखा है, हमारा ये परिवार का विस्तार हो रहा है, ये गौरवमय पल है। मैं आप सबसे आग्रह करता हूं कि इन टाइगर के सम्मान में अपने स्थान खड़े होकर के हम टाइगर को स्टैंडिंग ओवेशन दें। प्रोजेक्ट टाइगर की सफलता भारत के लिए ही नहीं, बल्कि पूरे विश्व के लिए गौरव का विषय है। भारत ने टाइगर को न सिर्फ बचाया है, बल्कि उसको फलने फूलने का एक बेहतरीन इकोसिस्टम दिया है। ये हम लोगों के लिए और भी सुखद है कि जिस समय हमने अपनी आजादी के 75 वर्ष पूरे किए हैं, उसी समय दुनिया की करीब करीब 75% टाइगर पॉपुलेशन भारत में ही है। ये भी संयोग है कि भारत में टाइगर रिजर्व भी 75,000 वर्ग किलोमीटर का, और बीते 10-12 वर्षों में टाइगर पॉपुलेशन भी 75% बढ़ी है। ये सभी के प्रयासों से संभव हो सका है, और इसके लिए मैं पूरे देश को बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं।
Well, Dr. Chanchani, even as we will, during the course of this discussion, going to talk about the International Big Cats Alliance as well, balancing economic growth whilst there is no compromise on conservation. Do you think that is something that's possible? We're trying to and aiming to become a home to another 1,500 tigers as well. Do you think the speed at which we want to achieve that goal and also economic growth, but at the same time balancing conservation, sustainable development has been our number one enemy all this while, hasn't it?
Well, that's a good question and perhaps a hard one to answer. So I think as an aspiration, it's obviously important to try and reconcile meeting the needs of a burgeoning population, one that we haven't had a population this size again in the history of the planet, on the one hand, and sustaining wildlife and biodiversity on the other. So I think I have a two-part answer, and I'll keep it brief.
All right.
When it comes to tigers, obviously, we've seen some successes in recent years. And I think, given, as we mentioned before, there's still vast spans of habitat that are empty that can support tigers. I think the potential for more animals, whether it's 1,500 or more, remains. Right? Whether we meet that future, how soon we get there, those questions depend on a lot of different factors. The reason we have as many tigers as we do is because there are still large and fairly contiguous blocks of habitat. The three landscapes that have the largest populations, Central India, the Western Ghats, and the Tarai, you see that the most significant contributions to the overall population come from these habitat blocks that are large, several thousand square kilometers in extent. Now, the fact is that these very same blocks are getting fragmented day by day, as we sort of race towards meeting various development targets to sort of fulfill the needs and aspirations of, very legitimate needs and aspirations of our population and to sort of boost economic growth. And I do think there'll come a point at which, growth can be detrimental unless, the planning very meticulously accounts for wildlife. Not just tigers, but the range of species of herbivores that they rely on for prey, the contiguity of habitats. And if you look at tigers narrowly, there are several attributes that enable tigers to breed quickly if the conditions are right. So you can see rapid population recovery. But I do think that if we want to take a more holistic view to the conservation of biodiversity in the times we live in, we need to look at tigers and beyond tigers. And there, the story of, we're in the midst of what they call the sixth mass extinction of species. We're losing species at unprecedented rates across taxa, mammals, birds, amphibians and reptiles, plants, and so on. So I do think much more needs to be done. And if we don't, it may be for short-term gains, but really for the detriment of generations to come. So I do think, prescient land use planning is the need of the hour.
Dr. Chanchani has been using the times we live in so much during this discussion as well. Prerna Singh, the times that we live in, do you think a step like the International Big Cats Alliance, it's something that has been initiated by India, is going to really help on the ecological standpoint, these big cats across the world?
I'll come to your question, but I must comment on your previous question, please, because when you talk about economic growth, now right. I must say here that while we stand committed to conserve the tiger, what we are doing at the same time is decimating its habitats, and I cannot stress this enough. We are diluting laws. See, the conservation stands on a legal policy framework as well as cooperation of the local communities, etc., and the sacrifices and dedication of our foresters and other and the state. But we are decimating and diluting this legal and framework, such as the Forest Conservation Act. We also have institutions like National Board of Wildlife, the Forest Advisory Committee, which provides safeguards against development activities in wildlife sanctuaries, protected areas, forest areas, etc., but which is allowing for very, very damaging activities within tiger reserves, tiger habitats, tiger corridors, the Panna river link, the Ken-Betwa river link, which will drown a third of Panna Tiger Reserve, being just an example. Similarly, a dam in Palamu Tiger Reserve, highways and railways in Molem National Park, Rajaji Tiger Landscape, you're allowing for new roads in and around. So, Corbett Landscape. So, unless we address this, can we dream of more tigers? Yes, as Pranav says, there are, and as I also emphasized earlier, there are vast tracts of forest where we must revive the population. But we cannot be doing this while decimating its landscape. They have a very shaky future.
So,
So these
Prerna,
are internal
what do
issues as well
what
that
do you
we need to
suggest?
look at.
What do you suggest? What do you suggest when we're looking
Also,
at reformation? When we're looking at reformation, what do you suggest? We've got poaching, we've got forest diversion, we've got habitat fragmentation. How do we stop this then?
so okay, my let's say quick 5 point or 3 point whatever agenda is one.
Right.
PAs and tiger reserves, they must be strictly sacrosanct. Our key wildlife and not just tiger, wildlife corridors, which include elephant corridors, which include bear populations, etc., they must be given some kind of graded protection. They need not be protected areas, but some kind of graded protection. Poaching is a huge concern. We've been very effective in controlling it, but what we need to do is also pay attention to the basics of empowering our frontline forest staff, our forest department, the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, to recognize the gravity and the scale of the wildlife crime, which is one of the the third or the fourth most biggest crime next to drugs, human trafficking, arms, etc. The fifth, and then we must seriously address human-tiger conflict. Now look at, say, a Tadoba landscape where I was recently. We lost 50 people last year to tigers in that entire district, Chandrapur district. And the management is struggling and trying to. So we need very serious thought on this, and we need to see how local communities which live in and around tiger habitat, which live on the fringes, how they benefit from conservation, how they do not bear the cost of conservation, that we take them along. To me, these are our critical 5 point agenda moving forward. And the Big Cat Alliance is a very good step, or that's another front, because we need international cooperation, A, to control demand on tiger products, and B, we must remember that tigers and other wildlife do not recognize political borders. They want to be able to go across to Bangladesh, Nepal, snow leopards across other habitats, Pakistan. For them, political borders have no meaning. International cooperation in allowing them passage, international cooperation in controlling poaching, international cooperation in coming together. These are wildlife are our ambassadors of peace. That's all I would like to say.
Well, absolutely. Prerna Singh's top 5 how to conserve tiger wildlife, and well, not just tiger wildlife in general. I'm going to implore all the viewers here to go check out her social media as well. There's a lot of cool stuff going on over there as well. But Dr. Chanchani, in the times that we live in, and all those points that were so eloquently put by Prerna Singh as well, do you think our heart is in the right place, even as political brinkmanship continues? Or Indira Gandhi began with this, the BJP now trying to claim credit, what each other parties are trying to allege at this point in time. Do you think our heart is in the right place? Project Tiger, from where it began, how we're looking, our outlook towards wildlife conservation, and the steps we're taking, also in tandem with the International Big Cats Alliance as well. Do you think our heart is in the right place?
Yes, at some levels, absolutely. I do think that to share space with big fierce wildlife like tigers and elephants, it takes a large heart, and not for you and I, who are often far removed from tiger habitats. It really takes a large heart and much more for people that share space with these animals on a day-to-day basis, often at personal cost and risk. So I would say collectively as a nation, one of the reasons we've been as successful as we have is also because there are so many people who are willing to put up with these risks and costs and really accommodate species like tigers. That said, I think heart is not enough. And just as Prerna said, I think the sort of legal foundation and policy to enable conservation to sort of, not just for today, but conservation for times to come in are critical. The decisions that we'll make here and now in the decade to come will, especially around land use planning, around conservation zonation and so on, will have really, really long-lasting impacts, because these are, some things, if you build a large dam, you can't undo that in a hurry. It's there for time to come. So I really think we're at a critical juncture, and the decisions that are being made here and now, and the policies that are sort of being revised and so on, the repercussions may not be seen or felt for some time to come. But they need a lot of deliberation, they need a lot of thought, and they need engagement from civil society, in addition, obviously, to the many initiatives and inputs from the government.
Well, absolutely. It has been a riveting conversation. Prerna Singh and Dr. Chinchani, many thanks for joining with us and helping us out with your insightful inputs. Of course, it's a moment to be proud of, but red flags by both the wildlife conservationists on the panel here. Tiger is a fascinating creature, and the number and the latest tally is also fascinating, but at the same time, there are red flags as well, and we must be careful in how we look towards wildlife conservation and really respect the people on the front line. So big congratulations to them as we commemorate 50 years of Project Tiger as well. Thanks for watching this episode. We're going to continue with content on News 9 Live. Don't go anywhere.